Hey everyone, welcome to EKC People Suck, where my cat likes to make a lot of noise behind me, and I like to kind of point out and talk about some of the craziest behavior I see in people, myself included at times. But today we're not talking about me. Today we're going to be talking about Brian Higgins, one of the witnesses in the Karen Reed murder trial, specifically a couple of moments during his cross-examination I like to point out and break down, if you will. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first one I wanted to talk about has to do with the beginning of him talking about the text messages, but it's not about the text messages at the moment. Right now, I want to talk about this backstory of his for the nickname dubbed to Karen Reed, Weed Whacker. I'm going to go ahead and let this play now, and I'm going to let him tell the story in its entirety, and then I'm going to rewind it, and then I'm going to break it down.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And so that initial communication you received on January 12th, 2022, that's about 8:27 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the content of the message that you received?
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Hey, Brian, it's Weed Whacker.
And how did you respond to that?
Question mark.
And if it's helpful to you, sir, if you can't see the screen sort of from where you are, you can read along in the exhibit before you.
Okay.
Now, as far as that communication is concerned, is the Weed Whacker, what, if any, meaning did that have to you?
So ultimately, it was based off a interaction with the defendant, kind of a nickname that she adopted.
And how did that nickname sort of come to be, or what, if anything, transpired between the two of you that led to that?
So I was leaving, I believe, my residence one day in Canton, traveling down Pleasant Street. I saw the defendant along the side of the house on the Pleasant Street side using a weed whacker, and I gave kind of a beep of the horn, and the defendant gave me the finger. So I realized that she clearly must not have recognized me possibly because of what I was driving. I was in my work vehicle. So I spun the vehicle around, and as I pulled up to roll down the window, she said something to the effect, "Get the fuck away from me. My husband's a Boston cop." And then I rolled down the window more, and she clearly recognized me, who I was in that vehicle.
Okay, so there is where I'm going to stop it. We're going to just be covering that part for most of it anyways. I think I might have started a few seconds early.
In Canton, traveling day.
Okay.
In Canton, traveling down Pleasant Street. I saw the defendant along the side of the house on Pleasant Street side using a weed whacker, and I gave kind of a beep of the horn.
Watch him.
And the defendant gave me the finger.
Notice when he said that, he said he's looking down, and the defendant gave me the finger, and he looked up, and his eyes for a second looked like they dart right over to Karen Reed, like, and she gave me the finger, like, you gave me the finger, like, come on. But I'm gonna let this keep playing.
So I realized that she clearly must not have recognized me possibly because of what I was driving. I was in my work vehicle.
She the only reason why she could have possibly given me the finger is because she didn't know it was me. She knew it was me. That never would have happened, in other words. And then he says, she probably didn't know it was me because I'm in my work vehicle. She doesn't know my work vehicle. I'm willing to bet that she doesn't really know any of his vehicles. Like, she wouldn't know what he drove on any day of the week or any time of the day. But he seems to think that she has all this knowledge about him, and right down to the kind of car he drives. But regardless, she only did that because she didn't recognize him, right?
So I spun the vehicle around, and as I pulled up to roll down the window.
See, there, right there. He spun it around. Now, I feel like most people in this situation, okay, they would either take the fact that she gave him the finger and be like, okay, yeah, she's cool, whatever, or they would be like, Wonder what I did to make her mad. Oh well, and just keep driving and forget about it. Or they would be like, oh, maybe she doesn't realize it's me or whatever. And just again, forget about it and keep driving. Especially when you consider the fact that he's not even that close of friends with John O'Keefe, or he wasn't rather. They barely talked. Like he shares one text exchange that he had with John O'Keefe regarding, I hope I didn't break your kids or your nephew's controller last night because they were drunk playing video games or whatever. Like that's like the one time thing he can recall. One back and forth in text that he can recall with John O'Keefe. It doesn't sound like that they were that close of buds. So why the hell is he beeping at his girl while he's driving down the road? And then why the hell is he spinning back around when he realizes, or when he believes, she just didn't recognize me? Let's go fix that right now. I'm going to turn back around so she can see it's me, and then she can rectify that finger shit. That's how it comes off. Like you're like, he's like claiming some sort of territory, like right off the bat, when he ain't even in his own country, you know?
She said something to the effect, "Get the fuck away from me. My husband's a Boston cop." And then I
don't even know why he's bringing it up like that. He's bringing it up like that. Like, it's like, yeah, can you believe she said that? You know, like she said that her husband was a Boston cop. Well, two things I want to bring about with this statement here. First of all, if you're female, you know what it's like to have people beep at you as you drive down the road or as you're walking down the road. And oftentimes they will turn back around. Well, maybe not so much now that I'm my age, but when I was younger, they did. They would turn back around. And if it's not there, then it's out in public somewhere. You know, it's some unwanted, unprovoked, unwelcomed attention that I'm expected to play nice about, be nice about, be appreciative, even if I'm not interested in the person giving the attention. Now, sometimes we just don't have it in us to have that discussion or that argument or that whatever, or to defend ourselves and say we're not really being a bitch. We shouldn't feel obligated to be nice to someone just because they said, you know, you look so much prettier when you smile. Okay. So sometimes we just say something like, I'm with my husband, or my husband's a Boston police officer, when they're just your boyfriend, right? That's why she said that. Okay. But I want to call attention to something else here. I'll be honest. I recorded this stream or this video once already today, and there are a couple of things I didn't like about it, so I want to fix it. But one thing though, I wanted to check before I actually did record it for real. I wanted to go through the witness testimonies in this trial so far, and I want to see how many times John O'Keefe is referred to as Officer O'Keefe, because he seems to have a problem with Karen calling officer, or calling her husband, or saying her husband is Boston PD, like she's married into Boston PD. Well, I have a problem with how many people here don't even refer to John O'Keefe as one of their fellow brothers in blue, as an officer, as with the same respect in which they keep referring to one another. I mean, everyone else involved is trooper that, officer this, you know, but no one's referring to John O'Keefe as Officer O'Keefe. Now, it's both sides. It's not just the prosecution, but it's first and foremost, it's the prosecution that's not doing it, along with all of these witnesses for the prosecution, all of these people who were his friends and family. The only people really who spoke highly of John O'Keefe as a police officer were his immediate family. All of these friends of his and fellow officer friends of his aren't giving any reference to it, besides the fact that they're giving testimony where they're distant and cold about the whole thing, like they're indifferent almost. But I digress there. But they're not even referring to him as a fellow officer in blue. Why the fuck is that? Think about that. I mean, anyone else, no matter how they were to meet their end, their colleagues would be referring to them by their title and be reminding everyone who that person was, what that person did. No one's doing that though here for John O'Keefe. Why is that? That's very bizarre to me. But I just let this keep going.
Then I roll down the window more, and She clearly recognized me, who I was in that vehicle.
So I spun back around. I rolled down the window. She's bitching about her husband, Boston PD. I rolled it down more so she can get another chance to realize it's me. And she clearly does finally recognize. That's this. That's just, there's something creepy about that. I don't know if it's like what nice guy creepy or what, but there's just something unsettling about that. He couldn't let her be mistaken. He couldn't let that ride. He had to make sure that she knew who it was. And she then took back her finger, basically. My cat's blocking the camera. Sorry. All right. So moving on. The other part I wanted to talk about is here. Make sure the sound, oh yeah, the sound didn't come through. For some reason, when I do share the screen instead, the sound doesn't come through and I have to reset it up again. So here we go. Here we go. All right, so this part here, we get into the text messages a little bit more, but mostly it's about their time to get all of them together at the waterfall. So I'm going to go ahead and start.
Same step, and just a reminder, you are still on the.
All right, Mr. Jackson, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Higgins, before we broke for lunch, we were talking about the text exchanges, the communication that you were having with Ms. Reed in the days leading up to January 23rd. You recall that?
Yes.
It's fair to say that her text communications with you started to dwindle off in the days before the 23rd, correct?
They lagged.
As a matter of fact,
What's the
you reached
difference?
out to her in an effort to try to prompt the conversation to continue, did you not?
I reached out to her, but I wouldn't say that's what it was about.
Well, you texted.
You reached out to her, meaning you did the conversation to continue or to start again, whatever. You may not have texted her for the sole purpose of just keeping you guys in touch, but I think you kind of did too.
Texted her, stranger. It's been not once but twice.
I believe so.
Take a look, if you don't mind, at, this is a page from what you've just seen.
So he needs the.
I'm sorry. That was right in front of you. May I approach?
Please.
Thank you. Just a second. Easy to
Maybe
find.
that should just stay with Mr. Higgins.
Thank you. That's easy to find. It's literally the last page. Report commission, may I publish?
Yes.
Does that look like a fair representation of what you're looking at, the last page of the
Okay.
series of texts?
Yes.
At the very top, could you read what you write in the blue bubbles, starting at the top?
I want to point out here. Well, actually, I'll let him read it first.
Stranger.
And then what was the response from Ms. Reed?
Hey, I was at the Hilly all weekend.
And what did you respond at that point?
I have not heard from you.
Okay, so right there. First of all, the way that they read the text change, the way the both the lawyer and Brian Higgins read it, it almost sounds like all these words were on one line, in other words, one text. But I want to point out that they weren't. There were 3 separate texts. I don't know how far apart they were, but they were somewhat close together since there's no time or date different, separating any of them. So he sent 3 texts. Haha, stranger. And then what was he sitting there thinking? Well, I guess maybe she didn't hear me the first time. Let me send that again, stranger. Okay, and it worked because she evidently, did respond. She said, "Hey, I was at Hilly all weekend." That screams to me like she's on the defensive because like she's already sensing from him with the stranger about how he's going to give me shit because I didn't make myself as accessible to him as he expected or thought I should. So she's on the defensive. Hey man, I was at the Hilly all weekend. I'm willing to bet that even if Brian had been there, she probably would have completely ignored him, if not mostly ignored him. But her statement there will get her out of an uncomfortable situation, possibly. But he doesn't even hear that. He doesn't see that. He just jumped right to the real heart of the matter, why he texted, the real reason, the real problem, the real issue at hand. Have not heard from you. Like, why haven't I heard from you? Like, I don't care where you were. I haven't heard from you.
And by the way, if you look at the next date down, what's the date underneath? I have not heard from you.
The 23rd.
So this would have preceded
No.
the 23rd, correct?
No,
Yes.
no. I would, as much as I hate to, point out that the defense here might be wrong or is wrong, I have an iPhone, and there oftentimes are more than one text on the same date, but if they're many hours apart or several hours apart, then the date, the day, and the time will re-emerge, will reappear for these later on texts. For example, okay, so here, okay, so here, if you look at top here, it says, oh wait, I can't see the camera. I don't know if you can see it or not. Okay, so you see at the very top here, it says Wednesday, May 15th at 3:49 p.m. Okay, and then I scroll down, and then it says again Wednesday, May 15th at 10:11 p.m. See? So, all right, yeah, that's nothing important. So as you can see, the date can and will appear when it's on the same date if there's been enough time between the texts. Like if that second text I showed you, if that had came up like a half an hour later, it probably wouldn't show that then. I don't know what guidelines or whatever they go by, or what their limit is before they start showing it again, but that's what happens. So that doesn't mean that these texts or the text before it happened on a subsequent date. It just means that it happened sometime before the text below it. So I find it strange how Brian Higgins was just like right up there, like, yep. Like it was so quick to agree. Like I would think someone in his position might know a little bit more than that. I don't know. Anyways.
Okay. Then on the 23rd, and by the way, after you texted, I have not heard from you, she did not respond, correct?
She did not respond.
Then on the 23rd, she did respond, the phone works, correct?
In the arrows, like both ways.
And again, I want to point out that they could have been on the same day. Very easily could have been, especially since that one on the bottom was to say 9:40 p.m. on Sunday the 23rd. So these here could have been like 9:40 a.m. on the 23rd.
Yep.
And then what did you text after that?
I just said, thought you were all set.
And how did she respond?
She said, we're talking? No.
That's all I have for that.
Okay. No, that, and then he responded with, "You sure?" So she was asked, and in context and everything, like on itself alone, you probably don't really know what the hell they're talking about. But in context, you figure it out. That's what they were talking about. And rather than him take her answer, but talking no at face value, he's like, "Are you sure?" Like trying to convince her that she's not sure, and that it's not. She doesn't really want what she wants. She might want what he wants. Are you sure?
The lights back up. So clearly, with that last text, her response was, in response to you saying, "Thought we were all set," she said, "With talking, no." Correct?
Yep. Yes.
Did that indicate to you that with flirting, yes, we're all done?
No, I didn't read anything into it.
Okay. But you did read
What do you mean you don't read anything into it? See, I don't think it saying that she was all set with flirting is an accurate assessment either. I think she was all set with any flirting possibly leading to some goal or whatever like that. She's all set there. But I mean, it also depends on what your definition is of flirting too, I guess. But you didn't read too much into it. You're reading into everything she does. Why are you asking her or talking about how you haven't heard from her, saying stranger, if you're not reading your fucking mind out into her?
what she said with talking no, correct?
Yes.
And then you responded how?
I said, are you sure?
And did she respond?
No.
As a matter of fact, the next time you saw or communicated with her, she was walking into the Waterfall Bar on the 29th, late night hours of the 28th, when in the early morning of the 29th, with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Now, you had discussed your flirtations, if I can use that word, that you had with Miss Reed with your friends, Lisa, correct?
I don't recall that. No.
Do you recall that you openly shared the details of your
I want
interest
to
in?
point something out here. He says, I don't recall that. Now, he said he has no problem saying yes or no to things. So he says, I don't recall that. But as you're going to hear, the defense attorney recalls it for him. So that leads me to wonder if every time I hear him say, I don't recall that, if there really is an instance that he knows about, but he's hoping that the defense doesn't bring up.
In Miss Reed with your work supervisor at the DOJ.
Well, that was after I shared what happened, that she kissed me. Yes, I did share that with her.
And that was with
That was the first time.
that was with a person by the name of Kate Dowd.
That was the first time you shared it, because you can't mean that was the first time she kissed you, because there's only been one time that this has been discussed. And I want to point out, it was a friendly peck, sure, on the lips, but a friendly peck, no tongue. I'm gonna be straight here. If the person being kissed or kissing wants there to be tongue, then tongue will happen, or will at least be initiated. The fact that there was no tongue means that there was no tongue desired.
Dowd, is that right?
That's correct.
That was before January 29th.
Yes.
And that's because your interest in Karen Reed, whether you call it romantic or sexual or whatever, your interest was something that was at least occupying your mind at that point, correct?
No.
It was occupying your mind enough to share it with your boss.
No, what I shared with my boss was the fact that she kissed me. That was it.
Yeah, because it was on your mind. It was occupying your mind. You talk about things that are on your mind. You don't talk about things that aren't on your mind. I mean, you have to think before you speak. Therefore, shit's on your mind.
Did you discuss your flirtatious relationship with Karen Reed with Brian Albert at any point?
No.
Never.
No.
So you were on a 4-hour drive in a snowstorm back from New York with Mr. Reed. I'm sorry, with Mr. Albert, and your interest in Karen Reed never came up.
No.
Even though he's a good friend.
See, I think that's a bunch of bullshit, because there's a 4-hour car ride. Okay, they just went to some funeral or whatever for 2 cops that I don't think either of them knew. Of course, they drive all the way to New York City to pay their respects to these 2 officers that they probably don't even know. But they don't even call their colleague here, Officer O'Keefe. In fact, I'm told that none of these people even went to John O'Keefe's funeral services. I'm also told Karen Reed didn't go also, but mostly because Karen Reed had a stay away order or some shit like that. None of these people had that. These people have been on great terms with John O'Keefe's family. Why the fuck weren't they at the funeral then? Assuming that they weren't there and I was in fact told the truth. But anyway, it's amazing though how they can drive all the way to New York City for 2 officers that they probably didn't even know, but they just can't do the simple respect of referring to their deceased friend as officer. And I want to say too that in this 4-hour car ride, I think that there's a good chance that this was talked about, because I'm on my understanding, Brian Albert was upset with John O'Keefe because John O'Keefe allegedly ratted out his nephew for dealing drugs or something. So I wouldn't be surprised if on this 4-hour car ride, that little tidbit was mentioned, in which Brian Higgins here probably felt compelled to be like, you want to get back at him or something, his girlfriend's been, hitting me up and shit. Even though I don't think that that's what was happening, but he thinks that was happening. So I have no doubt that this was absolutely discussed.
Yes, just something I wouldn't talk about.
You've been drinking since about what time? What time? That's a bad way to ask it. What time did you start drinking?
When are we at, Mr.?
I'm sorry, on the 28th, when you got back from New York. When did you start drinking?
Well, it wasn't until I swapped out vehicles and I went up to the hillside.
Okay. That would have been, give me a time frame. 9-ish, 8-ish?
It was dark. It was maybe in the area of 8 o'clock.
To which I want to point out, I live in the same geographical region as he does. I live in upstate New York. End of January, 5 o'clock at night, it's dark. It's by 8 o'clock, it's already been dark for 3 hours. So he may very well be correct in his time estimate there of 8 o'clock. But if he's basing this solely on the fact that it was dark, then he could be up to 3 hours off.
And what time do you think you got to Waterfall?
I couldn't say. I don't. It was after the hillside.
Before Brian Albert left Hillside, did he tell you that John O'Keefe had been invited over to meet them at the Waterfall?
No.
Was there any particular reason why you changed your mind and left the Hillside to go to the Waterfall?
Well, I think, as I previously testified, that it was because I didn't always take them up on their offer, and I usually did the Irish exit, and I decided because of the weather and everything else, it had been a long day, that I would go down there and join them.
Did it have anything to do with you knowing that Karen Reed might be at the Waterfall?
I only just heard this term Irish exit a couple years ago, but as soon as I heard it, I figured I knew exactly what it meant, and it's oddly true, like very true. But I want to point out here though that he says that I wanted to take them up on their offer because he didn't usually take them up on their offer in the past, and that he usually did the Irish exit. Not showing up is not the Irish exit. The Irish exit is just leaving without saying goodbye. Like, not everyone goes all around the room saying goodbye, giving hugs and kisses. Some people just grab their shit and go. So that's the Irish exit. But not even showing up to these invites is more like maybe the Irish RSVP. But yeah, it's very strange. So it's this night after this 4-hour car ride with Brian Albert, this night that he decided to take them up on this offer, and to take them up on the offer for like the entirety of the night, just about.
Couldn't have, because I didn't know she or John O'Keefe would even be there. I didn't know who was going to be there other than Brian's wife.
Do you have any text messages with Brian about going to the Waterfall?
I don't recall.
I don't recall. There we go. There it is.
He told me about it at the hillside.
And once he got to the Waterfall obviously before you did.
He did, I think, shortly before, yes.
Any text communications between you and Brian Albert about who was at the Waterfall or who was expected to come to the Waterfall?
No, not that I recall.
Not that I recall.
No. You've already indicated, and I don't think we need to go into a lot of detail about this, but I want to ask you just in general, the mood at the Waterfall was good spirits, correct?
It was great. Band was playing.
You did not see any sort of tension between John and Karen?
I did not.
Nobody seemed overly intoxicated?
No.
You had several drinks before you even got to the Waterfall, right?
I think it was 3 to 4.
Did you drink additionally at the Waterfall?
I did, yes.
Did you drink whiskey or beer or what?
Whiskey.
Okay. How many do you think you had?
I couldn't put a number on it. At least a couple.
And ultimately, you left from there in your personal vehicle and drove over to, that's the Jeep, drove over to the
yes.
Waterfall, correct?
I just want to take a moment here and go off track and point this out. Like, I get that police officers will break the law at times. They're not going to adhere to every single law to a T just because they're cops. If anything, it might be because they're cops that they don't do this at times. Whatever, I don't care. I do care, but I don't care right now. But this here, you would think that this would be one law that they would absolutely adhere to, given with the fact that they are first responders. I'm pretty sure that every traffic cop has some sort of horror story where they walk up on an accident that just occurred, and there's people mangled, gone, whatever, innocent victims, people who were not in the car or even drinking or in the car with someone who was drinking. They just got hit. So given that, you would think that this is one law, one thing that the police would not do. It's very, very sad to see that that's not the case.
I drove over to the Waterfall.
I'm sorry,
I was at the
left the Waterfall, drove over to 34th Fair.
I did, yes.
When John walked into the Waterfall, were you already there?
Yes.
He greeted you, you indicated, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Karen walked in with him.
Yes.
She did not greet you, did she?
I think they kind of went like that,
So-
different directions.
Right.
Yeah, she didn't greet me, but not because she was avoiding me. She didn't want to greet me. It's only because she was just having to go off in a different direction than John. That's all.
Yes.
Did she
It
greet
was just happenstance why it didn't happen, not her choice.
No.
you? Right. So she walked over toward the corner of the bar, and John came over and greeted you, and then walked over and joined her, correct?
Yes.
Karen didn't stop what she was doing when she was over in the corner of the bar and come over and say hi to you.
I didn't have any interaction with her that night. No.
So safe to say that throughout that evening while
Okay,
she was
that part
hung up
too.
next to John.
So she didn't come over to you and say hi or anything like that? I didn't have any interaction with her that evening. In other words, sure, we didn't talk, but not because she ignored me, because I didn't interact with her at all that night. Like, it wasn't her choice. I didn't interact with her.
John O'Keefe or friends that she was with, she never turned back around and came over and even acknowledged you, correct?
That's correct.
So she basically ignored you the entire evening.
That's not how I interpret it, no.
I didn't ask you how you interpreted it. I asked you what she did. Did she ignore you or did she pay attention to you?
Objection.
Okay, he seems to be not even considering the possibility that she's just not into him, because between, like, that's not how I interpret it. No, that and that's not how I read into it, or that's not how I see it. That's not how I took it, or whatever would get pertaining to text messages. Like, no, that's not what happened. No, that's not how I see it. I mean, it's something else other than that. It can't be that.
You can go ahead and answer that. Did she ignore you?
No.
So she paid attention
Even
to
the
you.
judge wants to know, did she ignore you?
Came over and said hello, shook your hand, gave you a hug.
Well, just because somebody didn't come over doesn't mean they ignored you.
Did she do those three things?
And that's true. I agree with him. But if they're not ignoring you, then they're acknowledging you somehow. And he's not giving any examples of any acknowledgement. Therefore, I believe she ignored him.
Hug? What was the other
Did she
thing?
say hello, shake your hand, give you a hug?
No, she did not.
No, she didn't do any of those things, did she?
No.
It's like you didn't even exist.
I think that's dramatic. No, I don't
I
look
don't
at it
look
that
at
way.
it that way.
Did she ignore you or not?
No, she did not ignore me.
So what did she do to not ignore you?
She was
What's her
work.
interaction with you?
Can I answer now?
Sure.
She, in my opinion, she was working the room, talking to people, saying hello, catching up.
Right. The one
Were
person
you
she
not
did,
in the room? I mean, if she's working the room, but she didn't say hello to you, then you must not be in the room, right? You must not be part of the room in which to be worked.
come over to talk to and say hello to and catch up with is you.
Well, I don't know that I was the only person, but I was one of the people that she didn't say hello to. Yes.
Treated you
Yeah,
like
so
a stranger.
she wasn't just ignoring me. She was just busy with other people because I wasn't the only one. See, he can't bring himself to just consider the possibility that she was ghosting him. She was blowing him off. She was over him.
I don't feel that
I
way.
don't
No.
feel that way.
She actually positioned herself away from you at the other end of the table on the opposite side in the corner. Isn't that right?
I don't know where she was all night. No,
Did
I
that
don't know.
upset you that she ignored you or didn't pay attention to you?
You knew she was working the room, catching up with people. You were watching her. You knew exactly where she was the entire time, I bet.
Did not feel ignored and didn't upset me at all.
But it bothered you enough to send her a text, didn't it?
No, it was a flirtatious text. It was just, that was it.
It bothered you enough.
It's not flirting. That's not flirting. That's being a fucking needy pain in the ass. That's not flirting.
Send her a text that said, with 6 M's behind it.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
well, correct.
Well, it wasn't like that. It was, well,
Yeah.
that's it.
Unless you guys both have like a thing for wells, there's nothing flirty about that text. That comes off as, hello, I'm here. Why aren't you paying attention to me? Why are you ignoring me? Like, what's going on? Like, fucking get it together here. Come on, wake up. That's how that comes off.
Just well, like a well in the ground.
I think you know what I mean.
Being a
Yeah,
bit
I think you do
dramatic.
too, sir. You meant, well, when are you gonna pay attention to me?
No, that's
Yeah.
not correct.
Well, why are you ignoring me?
It's not correct.
Well, am I chopped liver?
Objection.
All right, that's sustained. Mr. Jackson, let's move on.
At the end of the night, the group basically discussed going back to Brian Albert's house. Is that right?
There was discussion at the table of like, were we going to go to the pizza shop or were we going to go somewhere else? And ultimately it was 34 Fairview.
Before you left, just so we're clear, when you texted, well, she ignored that text too, didn't she?
Can you say that again?
When you texted her, well, at Waterfall, she ignored that text too, correct?
Well, that was the only text I sent that night to her. Yes.
Okay.
She didn't respond.
That wasn't my question. My
What,
question is she ignored the text, right?
well, I don't know if I don't know what her mindset was. If she purposely ignored the text or she didn't see it, I don't know.
See, he
I didn't
can't even give way to the possibility that she was in fact ghosting him. She has to say, well, it's possible she didn't see the text, or maybe she meant to text me back, but then she just got busy, or maybe she did text me, but she didn't hit the send button and it just didn't go through. It's not, it doesn't mean that she was blowing me off. Like, it's what? Okay. But he said something interesting there. Wait a second.
I didn't read into it.
Did she ignore the text, Mr. Higgins?
I don't know.
Did she respond to the text?
She did not respond.
Yeah, we're not there.
So when everybody was leaving, did you leave before they did, John and Karen, or did they leave before you did?
I don't know.
You said you were the first one back to Brian Albert's house, correct?
Yes.
Safe to say you were one of the first ones to leave.
I was the first one to leave
Waterfall.
the waterfall. Probably.
I mean, if you're if everybody's herding out and you're the first one to get there, you're probably among the first to leave, correct?
Most likely.
Okay. You never personally discussed going to 34 Fairview with, certainly not with Karen Reed, did you?
No.
And you never discussed it with John O'Keefe either, did you?
No.
But you knew they were going.
You didn't say goodbye or walk over and give John a big hug or anything like that? An
No.
acknowledgement, did you?
No.
You just left.
That's what everybody was doing, just leaving.
Okay. You too,
They're all Irish.
correct?
I did leave, yes.
And all you knew that at that point, all you knew was that you were going over to 34 Fairview. You did not know who else was invited over to 34 Fairview.
My impression was that it was an open invitation, and I planned on heading over
Okay.
there.
But you did.
Now, he just said a minute ago that there was some discussion about going over there afterwards. But there was just some discussion at the table about possibly going next door to eat pizza or go over to the Albert's house. Well, we've already heard people testify to the whole going next door and eating pizza thing, because that was Karen Reed's idea. That was what she was pushing for. She wanted to do that. She wanted to go next door and eat pizza. She didn't really want to go to somebody's house that she didn't know, I guess, maybe. I think she just wanted pizza. I don't blame her. So if he knows about that discussion, then he must know that Karen participated in that discussion. And he knows that they ultimately decided not to do that. So I think he absolutely knew or suspected or had a good reason to assume that they were going to be at the Albert's house.
You did not know who else was coming.
I had no idea who was coming.
And you didn't say goodbye to John, correct?
I don't think I said goodbye to anybody.
And you didn't talk to him about coming over to 34 Fairview.
No.
Yet at 2:20 in the morning, you texted John O'Keefe, you coming here, correct?
At 2:20,
Sorry, 12:20.
I did.
That had 3 question marks behind it, correct?
He
Yes.
would have just
Did you
gotten there.
text Karen about coming
Right.
over to 34 Fairview?
No.
So at 12:20 a.m., after you left the waterfall and made your way over to 34 Fairview, you were more interested in getting John to come to 34 Fairview than you were to getting Karen to come to 34 Fairview.
No, that's not how I would describe that.
Bullshit.
But you didn't text Karen, correct?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But you did text
All
John.
right. So I know that other people are of the opinion that he only texted John that to find out Karen was coming. I say that's incorrect, because he didn't say, "Hey, are you guys coming?" He said, "Are you coming? Are you coming? You coming?" He didn't say, "Are you guys coming?" Now, if he was more interested in finding out if a third party, the third person, whatever, was coming, then he would include that in his question. He would say, "Are you guys coming?" He was specifically asking the person he was talking to, and only the person he was talking to, if that person was coming, because he said, "Are you coming?" Now, and I want to point out too that Mr. Irish Exit / RSVP over here, who never took them up on their offer or anything, took them up on their offer at the waterfall, and then to go back to the Albert's home afterwards. In fact, he was so eager to go over there that he got there before everyone else, before the owners. And as soon as he got there, what is that when he texted John? Like, he got there, showed up and said, "You coming? You coming?" That's how it sounds. He got there before everyone else. Why was he so happy and willing and there for this night when he really just wasn't there for the others? And what is he doing texting John? I mean, he's only spoke of one other text exchange with John, and there was a while back previous to this where they got drunk at John's or whatever, and he was worried that he might have broken a controller. Like, why did the second he got to the Albert's home, before anyone else, he hurried up and texted John and said, "You coming?" if he wanted to know about Karen, he would have said, "Are you guys coming?"
Yes.
You've indicated that you took your Jeep,
All right.
your personal vehicle with the plow on it.
That's
over
about all I
30
wanted to cover. But yeah, he's in my opinion, he's lying about knowing or having an idea of who was going over to the Albert's home afterwards, because he himself admitted to overhearing the discussion at the table, about whether or not to do that or go next door and make pizzas. That was Karen Reed's idea, which she wanted to do. So clearly he overheard Karen Reed participating in this discussion. He had to have had some sort of inclination that they were likely to show up at the Albert home. And also, when it's reiterated what he said to John in the text, it's not like, "Hey, John, I was wondering, you guys coming over to the Albert tonight? You know, we're all over here hanging out. Are you coming over too?" You know, it was not even like that. It was like, "You coming over?" Straight to the point, no fucking around, no niceness or anything, no pleasantries. "You coming? You coming?" Yeah, he didn't give a shit about Karen Reed coming over at that point. In fact, I'm willing to bet that he didn't really want her there. Or maybe he did. It's even more fucked up. Like, I wonder what would have happened had she walked in the house with John. Would none of this have happened? Or would more have happened? Like, that bothers me. And I'm kind of curious. So the Canton Police Department, upon finding a Boston police officer dead on someone's lawn, they can't even simply pick up evidence and put it in a bag properly. I'm kind of curious, how would they react if Boston Police Department found a Canton police officer dead on someone's lawn in Boston, and they shit all over the investigation and then wouldn't even refer to him as officer? Wonder how that would go over. Lastly, okay, this is a trial taking place around Boston with a bunch of people who live in and around Boston. They've had like an untold amount of opportunities to say "park the car," but they don't say it. They say "vehicle." What are we even doing here? I'm just throwing it out there. Just consider it. Holy shit, my cat just fell. See, even my cat wants you to say it. My cat's pissed off. Stop my cat from jumping off of high structures, okay? Just say it, please. For everyone watching. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, guys. Where's my